So Rick Wolf with Soul Survivor Outdoor here with Randy Garcia, our Colorado area director. And Soul Survivor Outdoor, we focus 100% on active duty military. We are out there doing outdoor adventure. We're an outdoor adventure company, and our audience is typically 18 to 25-year-old, active duty service member, able-bodied. And so anyway, Randy and I are going to talk a little bit more about, I think we're going to flesh out some stuff we've talked about in the last podcast. We talked a little bit about spark. I think sometimes people are really curious, how much of an impact can an organization have that spends 4 to 8 hours with a service member doing some sort of outdoor adventure activity? Can that really be that impactful? And we've discussed that a little bit in previous talks. But let's talk about that a little bit more and what your experience, Randy, has been so far. And you've been doing this as an area director. Before that, you were a volunteer, and so you've got kind of a both sides of the coin perspective on that. And tell me what your perception has been this year in terms of how those short engagements have had an impact on our military service members.
Yeah, I think to back up, it's been really powerful. We partner so closely, Rick, with commanders, senior enlisted, and the chaplain corps.
Right.
And those individuals really have a heavy weight on their shoulders. I talked to a chaplain out at Schriever Space Force Base who had just had a suicide, and that was his main event that he was looking at. And boy, the weight is so heavy on them.
Right.
And so we really do come alongside those commanders, the senior enlisted, and the chaplains to try to help them in their mission of completing their mission with solid soldiers, airmen, Marines, sailors, to be able to just do their mission. And we believe a spiritually fit individual, just like the H2F and other policies from the military say, hey, we want a well-rounded, very healthy individual.
Absolutely.
So what does the spark do? I think we go to an event like an SSO outing. Let's take the last one we did was zip lining with an engineer unit at Fort Carson. They are go, go, go. It was hard for them to break away and get time on their schedule. And as you know, we do things during the work week. We don't do weekends. We don't take weekends away from units and families.
Right.
And so we were able to take 35 soldiers zip lining. And when I looked for a show of hands, there were only 2 people who had ziplined before.
Wow.
And you would think, that's pretty prevalent out there. And so there was, we did 6 runs, and it was really fun. So you have all these different runs, and you saw the confidence build along the way. And I think what that does, when you get outside, you're out of your norm, you really do let your guard down.
Right.
We saw that even within the unit, as, not everybody knows everybody in a unit.
Right.
We saw a lot more of that, and their guard was down, and it's more, hey, we're being a little bit more human. We're not on as we are with our normal daily mission. One guy commented, this is a lot better than hanging out and loading Connex boxes on a hot day. So I said, hey, how about that? And then we go to these, then we have the guest speaker, and we had one of my favorite guys, Eddie Jackson, Sergeant First Class, retired Army. He has a powerful story that really, as a guy who has been there, done that, was cream of the crop in the Army, as Richard talked about in a previous podcast, had the badges, had the deployment experience, and he had the TBIs and the PTSD to go along with that. He had that story of really going from the top to the bottom because of where he put his identity. And then how he came back out of that through his identity in Christ and being told, hey, there's more to you than where you've landed here at the bottom. It's really powerful. And you would see in the faces of the soldiers, they were glued to his message.
Right.
And, we talk before and after the event about one of the main reasons we work with active duty is getting in front of the skills required to get through and be spiritually resilient so that we don't have this huge veteran suicide problem that we've seen.
Right.
So how can I give skills? How can we, teach skills that give you that resilience while you're active duty?
Right.
And so when you make that transition, you're able to not only cope yourself, but also help others through that together. And that, I think that whole message really resonated. So, Paul talks to the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians, I believe it's chapter 3, about there's a little debate about who does what. Hey, Paul did this, Apollos did that. And Paul says, you know what? I planted, Apollos watered, but it's God who causes the growth.
That's right.
And we've met with the local parachurch organizations that really thrive in discipleship on the bases.
Yep.
We've spoken to the chaplains. They typically are one of the conclusion of our events is, hey, here's your chaplain. They may have a few words. So it really is a partnership. So that spark is igniting the embers that those others are going to help us carry on. And then we're coming back again. The same units are saying, the captain said, hey, we need you again. We're going to do this deployment to Fort Irwin. We're doing this on our workups, but we'd like to put another event on the calendar. Can we do that? So So I think the spark, it's there. And I think just to conclude on that thought, you've got the different types of soil. So the seeds land on different soils. And I tell you what, there's some very receptive soil right now in the U.S. military.
Yeah. Well, I like what you said about going kind of back to the beginning where, the amount of pressure that they're feeling, the leadership. We use the analogy sometimes that if you're on a bad road, you kind of got your hands on the steering wheel and they're so tight and you look down and you're like, wow, the blood all is out of my knuckles. And we say, are you white knuckling it to these leaders? And even the more junior service members, what's your position in terms of how you're handling life and its stress and everything? Are you white knuckling it? And so those commanders and chaplains and different leaders and being able to engage with them, that's so important. That spark really originates with them to get the interest that, hey, we're maybe trying to get ahead of these issues. We're also answering the Department of Defense on, they're saying, hey, this is a mandate. We need to be mentally, physically, spiritually, socially, and emotionally fit. This is not optional. It is something that you have to have. And so I think that, so we get to enter into that conversation, and then we have somebody like Eddie come out and share his story of how here's where I was and here's where I am now. And that's just so impactful. And so now it's igniting a spark into these young service members, which then carry, the spark kind of, unfortunately for you, you went through an actual fire where your home burnt down a number of years ago. But when the sparks, in a good way, when the sparks go from one place to the next, right? And that's what's happening. So that wouldn't have been a great example of that. But in terms of God igniting the fire in all these other individuals, that's just incredibly dynamic. And then Richard and I were talking about how it's then flowing over to the vendor relationship that we have going on, and the next chaplain or the next commander that's happening, or the bus driver who, you're not even thinking about the bus driver. They're bringing some people out to an event, and you're thinking they're going to sit on the bus and wait for people to come and go from the bus, and that's not the case at all. They're entering into the conversation and being part of what God is doing in terms of calling everybody to Himself. And so, yeah, I find it really interesting because I think sometimes when we're asked that question is, well, it's not really, is that really a kingdom investment to invest in what Soul Survivor Outdoor is doing? Because, you're just having such a short-term, evolution with them. You're not getting those super deep conversations, which that's not even true because we're having more and more people stay after events and want to know more. And even my 17-year-old son and I, the other day, we were getting ready for one of these podcasts. And so Nathan was sitting in to, do a sound check and everything. And I asked him some questions. I said, how do these service members show up at an event? And he's like, they're kind of closed. They're really quiet. They have a straight look on their face. They're so serious. And then I said, well, does that change? And he goes, oh my gosh, throughout the day, he's noticing and, that their countenance is changing, that little bit of getting away from the office, or as you said, they're not embarking boxes or taking care of equipment or something. They're out there recharging their batteries. Same thing happened with a colonel from the Marines I was talking to the other day. He said the same thing. They come out. It's important for them to get out there. If they can let go of the steering wheel they've been holding on to so tightly. And he said it's absolutely 100% worth it. We need to get these service members out there. And so these senior leaders are seeing it. So the sparks are with the senior leaders. They are with the religious chaplaincy community. They are with the individual service member. They're with the who knows where this even stops? And Richard and I talked about that earlier, on another podcast, again, where are these ripples going? If you threw one rock into the pond, you'd see the one little ripple take off, but we're talking about hundreds, thousands of ripples and the impacts and the stories. And so, so I asked you that question because I think I felt like I knew the answer, right? Which was, absolutely 100% worth lighting that spark, giving them the resource, setting them on a trajectory to do as Jesus said. If you stop and you listen to what I say and you do it, you're like the wise person who built their house on the rock. And when the storms come, the home endures. But if you've got your life built on sand, you can forget about it. It's just washed out to sea, and that has both immediate consequences in the here and now as human beings living on this planet, but it also has eternal consequences as well. And we say, that one little spark, it changes literally everything from darkness to light, from death to life. And so anyway, thanks for jumping on this real quick podcast and talking about the spark, and that it really is impactful. And, I think that we want to keep doing it. And then those of you who are supporting us out there, you can trust us with your kingdom investment, because it's setting things ablaze in a good way.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
thanks again, Randy.
Yeah, thanks, Rick.
All right.